In the forgotten town of Hollow Creek, Kentucky, there stands a house no one has lived in for 47 years. The windows are sealed shut from the inside. The doors are bolted with rusted chains, and on the northern wall and burned into the wood, 7 names, 7 dates, and 7 identical family symbols. Every name belongs to a daughter. Every daughter belonged to the same bloodline, and every single one of them married her own brother. Not by accident, not by rumor, by ritual. By law, by something older than religion and deeper than science. Doctors tried to study them. Priests tried to cleanse them. But something always stopped the investigations. Some said it was fear. Others said it was bribery. But those who lived closest to that house whispered a different reason. They weren't entirely human anymore. In 1912, Dr. Walter Crowhurst, a geneticist from the University of Chicago, was sent to investigate the case. He entered that house with 2 assistants. He came out alone. He never spoke again. Before his death, he left behind only one journal entry, just 6 words. I saw evolution reverse itself. And this is where the world stopped asking why they married their own blood. They started asking on what were they protecting? What happens to a family when bloodlines stop branching? And start looping? What happens when heritage becomes a prison? What happens when children are born not to grow, but to preserve something? Something dangerous. Something ancient. Something waiting to awaken. Their story was buried. Their records were sealed, and yet the bloodline survived. Tonight we unseal what no one dared to read. We reopen the house. We trace the blood. We follow the daughters. 7 generations, 7 rituals, and the one terrifying family secret that science will never explain. Hollow Creek, Kentucky, population 1,204. A place where time slowed down, where people measured life not in years but in winters. The forest stood ancient and untouched, thicker than maps showed, older than family names could trace. The locals had a rule that even outsiders found strange. No one builds beyond the 7th oak. No one asked why. No one dared to test it. At the end of that invisible border stood the Crowhurst estate. Not a house, but a monument. Built in 1789 by Elias Crowhurst, a land surveyor who mysteriously abandoned his government post in Virginia to settle in Hollow Creek. He brought with him only 1 wagon, 1 wife, and twin newborns, a son and a daughter. That was generation 1. The house was built with wood that didn't grow anywhere near Kentucky. The floors were made of dark walnut, the foundation of rough-cut limestone. But every door had a lock, and on the inside, every window had wooden bars. Every room was double-walled. It was a home designed not to keep intruders out, but to keep its residents in. Old tax records show something unusual, and for decades, no marriage licenses were ever requested from this family. No Crowhurst ever married in a church. No Crowhurst wedding was ever seen by town witnesses. But once every generation, a carriage would arrive from the woods. And 2 people would step out. Always 2. Always a brother and a sister. They never smiled. They never spoke. But always, the woman wore red. In 1817, the family no longer attended town gatherings. In 1842, they stopped visiting doctors. By 1855, they no longer hired workers. The Crowhursts became self-sufficient. They farmed. They taught their own children. They even buried their own dead. All within the quiet grounds of that estate. But here's where it gets strange. Every grave had 1 name, only 1. No spouse. No parents. No children. Just 1 name, and 1 identical family symbol, a circle with no beginning and no end, a loop. In 1863, during the Civil War, Union soldiers attempted to take refuge in the Crowhurst house for supplies. Only 1 soldier made it back to camp. He was delirious, rambling, unable to speak clearly, but Army records preserved his last words. They don't live in that house. The house lives in them. What did he mean? No one knew. No one investigated. Because by then, the Crowhursts didn't allow visitors and Hollow Creek didn't ask questions. But locals began to notice something unsettling. Every Crowhurst child, for 7 generations, had unusual eyes, pale silver. Some said reflective like a mirror. Others swore the children could see in pitch-black darkness. And there were other whispers too, that they healed faster than others, that they rarely got sick, that some lived much longer than normal. But the most disturbing rumor? They were all born in pairs. Always twins. Always 1 boy. Always one girl. And they always married each other. If you found records of your own, ancestors marrying within the family to protect something, would you investigate further or destroy the records? Tell me in the comments. In 1891, a physician named Dr. Henry Malden visited Hollow Creek after reports of genetic anomalies connected to the Crowhurst bloodline. His journal from that visit survives. He wrote, "I met a young Crowhurst girl, perhaps 15. Her manner, poised, articulate, unnaturally calm. When I asked if she had siblings, she smiled. Yes, I have my future husband." When Dr. Malden contacted the authorities, the town council intervened. No one outside Hollow Creek was allowed to investigate the Crowhursts again. But one thing was certain. For 7 generations, the family did not grow. It did not expand. It simply looped. And on nights when the wind blew east, some said they heard whispers coming from that house. Not crying, not laughing, whispering in pairs, a voice that answered itself. The Crowhurst records show a chilling pattern. In every generation, only 2 children were ever born. Always twins, always one male and one female. But the strangest part? Their births were never recorded in Hollow Creek. No hospital files, no midwives, no witnesses. It was as if they simply appeared. Generation 4 produced the most documented pair, Lawrence and Alara Crowhurst. Born in 1879, their story gives us the first real glimpse into the eerie, emotional world inside that house. Lawrence Crowhurst, tall, unsettlingly calm, silver-eyed, was known for wandering the edge of the Crowhurst woods, carrying no lantern. Locals swore his eyes glowed faintly in the dark. He rarely spoke, but when he did, people listened not because they wanted to, but because something in his voice felt like instruction. His twin, Alara's, was very different. Poised, delicate, graceful, with a face people could never properly remember. People described her as beautiful, but no one could describe how. It was as if her features changed ever so slightly each time someone looked at her. Even her photographs, the few that exist, seem subtly altered, blurred or faded around the edges. They never stood close to each other, but they never stood far. There was always a sense of synchronized distance, as if a thread held them together, even when their bodies did not. A former teacher, one of the last outsiders ever allowed inside the Crowhurst estate, wrote in a diary, "They did not look at each other like siblings. They looked at each other like a mirror looks at itself." In public, Alara never called him brother. She called him my counterpart. And Lawrence never said sister. He said my living half. In 1895, when they were 16, something happened, an event locals still whisper about, but none will confirm. It was called the Night of the Veil. No one knows exactly what happened, but the mountains echoed with a sound no one could identify. Not human, not animal. After that night, Lawrence and Alara never left the estate again. Neighbors reported seeing candles in every window. All night. Every night. Something was being prepared. Audience question. If a family lived by rules no one else understood, but never broke them for centuries, would you call it tradition or something darker? By 1897, preparations for the family union had begun, their term for what we now understand as marriage. No church, no guests. Only handwritten vows passed from twin to twin, generation after generation. On the morning of their ritual, an investigative journalist from Cincinnati named Ruth Jamerson managed to secretly enter the estate grounds. She never went inside, but she saw enough to write this. I watched from the tree line. There were no priests, no music. Only the twins, facing each other, not speaking, but both silently repeating the same words. Like reciting a memory neither of them created, she saw something else too. When the ceremony ended, they didn't kiss. They simply touched fingertips, and her hand twitched. Not a flinch, not nerves. A twitch, like something beneath her skin was adjusting. Shortly after, Ruth tried to publish what she saw, but her manuscript never made it to print, because she never left Hollow Creek alive. Her body was found near the 7th oak, folded carefully as if someone didn't want to break it. Her notebook was found beside her. Just one sentence written on the last page. They speak without speaking. From that point forward, the Crowhursts were never described as strange. They were described as studied. Harvard, Princeton, the University of Chicago. They all wanted the Crowhurst records, the genetic samples, the secret behind 7 generations of pure lineage. But the family refused. They weren't protecting their secrets from science. They were protecting science from their secrets, and everything hidden inside Hollow Creek was about to surface. The Crowhurst estate was quiet, but not silent. Those who lived near it swore that on cold autumn nights, when wind crawled through hollow branches, the house seemed to breathe. Not creak, not settle, breathe. Like wood remembered something. But the strangest reports began in 1902, when neighbors claimed they heard whispers, not shouting, not chanting, but 2 voices speaking in perfect unison, even when only one person was seen standing at the window. Those voices, Lawrence and Alara Crowhurst, the twins who no longer referred to each other as brother and sister. When they turned 23, it was noted that they never needed candles in their rooms. They navigated dark hallways without touching walls, without sound, without hesitation, and they never ever dreamed alone. Their journals, preserved in the Hollow Creek County Archive, locked in restricted storage, confirm something chilling. Some nights my eyes see what Alara's eyes see. Lawrence. Some mornings I wake with his heartbeat. Alara. We place 2 pillows but only leave 1 imprint. Both. Doctors called it psychological bonding. Priests called it spiritual uncleanliness. The Crowhursts never called it anything. They simply called it normal. Audience question, engagement hook. If twins could see through each other's eyes, would they still be 2 people? Or just one split in half? In 1903, a silent event unfolded. No documents officially recorded it. But Hollow Creek remembers. They called it the awakening at Moonridge Gate. One freezing January morning, every animal within half a mile of the Crowhurst estate went silent. Birds did not fly. Dogs would not bark. Horses refused to enter the road, near the house as if some ancient instinct forced them back. That same day, a faint sound like synchronized humming was heard coming from inside the walls. From inside the walls, a local carpenter, J.L. Burton, called to repair a collapsed ceiling panel, wrote in a shaken letter years later. There were words coming from the beams. Not voices, words, like the house was remembering conversations. And when I touched the wood, it felt warm, like skin. The Crowhursts never asked him to return. But something did change after that day. Lawrence began sealing the upper rooms and not locking, sealing and with plaster mixed with ash. Alara was seen marking door frames with a circle, drawn twice around and once small, once large, as though she was enclosing something, or protecting something. 5 days later, a letter was sent from the Crowhurst estate to the University of Virginia's genetics department. It contained no request, no greeting, just a single handwritten statement. We are no longer losing traits. We are gaining them. No signature. But every professor knew exactly which house it came from. The university begged to study them. The Crowhursts agreed, but only on their property. 3 researchers arrived. Only 2 returned. Dr. Hollis Ward, after 12 hours inside the estate, resigned from the university entirely. He left only a 3-sentence note on his office desk. The Crowhurst twins are not evolving. They are remembering. Something old is waking within their blood. That note was never published. But it was kept. Locked, quiet, protected. From that point, the Crowhursts were no longer subjects of curiosity. They were subjects of fear. But the question remained, what were they remembering? They were not drawing knowledge from books. They were not inheriting culture through traditions. They were recalling things no human had ever taught them. Things no one alive should know. Knowledge from no known religion, symbols that matched no known language, and dreams that felt less like visions and more like instructions. And in every dream, they said, there was always one thing present. A circle with no beginning and no end. The bloodline. The loop. The memory that births itself. April 14th, 1905. The day Hollow Creek stopped whispering about the Crowhursts and started fearing them. That morning, 3 scientific investigators arrived from the University of Chicago, led by a man who believed no superstition could challenge science, Dr. Walter Crayford, a geneticist specializing in hereditary abnormalities. He carried journals, scalpels, notebooks, and a belief that everything has a measurable explanation. Within 48 hours, he would destroy every theory he had ever trusted. The Crowhurst estate was expecting them. They weren't greeted at the door. They were greeted inside as if the house already knew their arrival time. Lawrence Crowhurst spoke first. Calm, formal, cold. He said only one sentence. "We have been waiting for someone to measure what cannot be measured." From the beginning, the researchers felt watched. Not only by Lawrence and Alara, but by the house itself. The floors didn't creak randomly. The creak sounded responsive, like footsteps pacing somewhere deep inside the walls. Alara led them to a study, dimly lit, windows covered, air unnaturally still. On the desk lay handwritten journals from every previous Crowhurst generation. Except they weren't written in English. They weren't written in any known language. Not Latin, not Aramaic, not Greek. But somehow, Dr. Crayford said he felt like he almost understood them, without reading a word. Like his brain remembered something it had never seen. That night, and the team heard something they could never explain. Not footsteps, not chanting. Two voices whispering in complete unison, from two different floors. Yet only Alara and Lawrence were visible, silent, unmoving. At 3:10 a.m., the twins knocked once on the wall. The house knocked back. Not an echo. A reply. Dr. Crayford looked at Alara and whispered, "What's inside your walls?" She didn't blink. She didn't smile. She simply said, "Not what, who?" The doctors inspected the walls at dawn. They found no insulation, no wiring, no empty hollow space, only wood. But that wood was warm like living skin. They took samples. Halfway through the experiment, Crayford froze. The wood grain was repeating. Not random, not natural. It formed spirals, perfect spirals, endless loops. The same Crowhurst family symbol, a circle with no beginning, no end. That evening, Lawrence Crowhurst, silent for most of the investigation, suddenly spoke. He said, "For 7 generations, Crowhurst blood never strayed. Because we were never preserving family, we were preserving a pattern." Dr. Crayford asked, "What pattern?" Lawrence turned toward Alara. They didn't look at each other. They mirrored each other. Same eyes, same breath, same pulse. 2 people, 1 rhythm. Alara stepped closer and said, "We are not each other's husbands or wives. We are each other's copies. The family tree doesn't grow. It loops." Then she raised her sleeve, revealing something beneath her skin. Not veins, not bone. A faint spiral mark, glowing, moving, alive, almost as if the pattern wasn't printed, but growing. Dr. Crayford dropped his notebook. He didn't speak again. He left Hollow Creek 3 days later. He destroyed every publication he ever wrote. Before he died, he penned only 6 final words. "I saw evolution reverse itself." No one returned to study the Crowhursts after that. Not because the mystery was solved, but because science no longer wanted the answer. The scientists left, but the house did not forget them. Within months, something peculiar began happening outside Hollow Creek. In Chicago, Baltimore, even as far as Richmond, Virginia, doctors began, quietly reporting children being born with reflective gray eyes. None of them had Crowhurst blood. None of them had ever even been near Kentucky. Yet somehow, the pattern was spreading. Geneticists studied them. No known mutation, no traceable heredity. Yet all children had one common trait. They dreamed of a house they had never seen, a house with barred windows, and 2 voices whispering in perfect unison. But that was just the beginning. In 1911, a school teacher in Hollow Creek named Marjorie Hale reported something deeply disturbing. She had 15 students, none related, all from ordinary families. But 10 of those children, during an outdoor lesson, turned their heads in the exact same direction at the same moment, toward the Crowhurst estate. 10 children, all looking at a house they couldn't even see through the trees. Marjorie asked them why. Every single one said the same thing. "Someone called us." Not someone. 2. That winter, something even stranger happened. 3 Crowhurst girls were born to 3 different families. But here's the twist: they were born on the same day, at the same hour, under the same moon, without any genetic relation to the Crowhurst bloodline, and all 3, before they could even talk, would turn their heads toward the east whenever the wind blew from the Hollow Creek woods, as if something familiar was calling. Not a voice, not a word, a memory. The Crowhurst twins were no longer containing the pattern. The pattern was escaping, Inside the Crowhurst estate, Ilara began sealing the windows. Lawrence stopped speaking entirely, not out of fear, out of awareness, because they understood something science never could. Bloodlines can be locked, bodies can be isolated, but patterns cannot be contained. Not when the pattern is intelligent, not when the pattern wants to be remembered. By 1914, the Crowhursts finally broke their silence. They sent one document, not to a university, not to doctors, but to the U.S. Census Bureau. It contained no names, no dates, no family trees. It only said, "In every family there will always be two." No explanation, but it was enough, because by then Hollow Creek wasn't quiet anymore. It was echoing, with two voices. Audience question. If a pattern could live inside people, not in blood, not in DNA, but in memory, could it still be stopped? Or does it become something eternal? By the 1920s, the Crowhurst home was abandoned, windows sealed, doors locked, no smoke from the chimney, no footprints on the grounds. Some say the last twins died. Some say they never died. They simply left the house, not through the door, not into the town, but into people, into families, into generations that never knew their names. And today, even now, genetic records still show it. In nearly every generation, in nearly every family tree, somewhere, there appear two. Two born close in time, two with matching traits, two who finish each other's sentences, without trying, two who feel more like reflections than relatives, two who don't evolve. But remember, the Crowhurst estate stands empty. No lights, no voices, no signs of life. But those who've dared to step inside will tell you, it doesn't feel abandoned. It feels like it's waiting. Dust covers the floors, but never the walls. The windows are sealed, but sometimes wind still gets in. Not from outside, from inside. One investigator, amateur historian, Peter Lowell, entered in 1954. He never found bodies. No journals, no relics. Only one thing left behind, a small cracked mirror, and on the glass, scratched by something sharp, were these words, "I'm not a person. I am a memory." He never went back. The Crowhurst name, officially, ended in 1926. No records of marriage, birth, or death after that. But here's what historians don't tell you. The pattern didn't hide in blood anymore. It moved into something better. Memory, because memories don't need a house. Memories don't need a family tree. They don't even need names. They only need someone to remember them. In 1972, researchers at Johns Hopkins University conducted a study on genetic déjà vu. 32 children, from 32 unrelated families. When shown a photo of the Crowhurst house, a house none had ever seen, 11 children pointed at a specific window and said, "That's where the voices live." Not ghosts, not spirits. Voices. 2 of them. Generations pass, names fade, bloodlines erase. But still, there are those who feel like they've lived before. Not in a mystical, spiritual way, in a specific way. They remember doors they've never opened, rooms they've never walked through, the sound of whispers they've never actually heard. And sometimes, late at night, they write down symbols they don't understand. Circles, spirals, repeating loops. The same pattern carved into the wood at Hollow Creek, where the twins once stood. Before the house was sealed forever, one final note was recovered from its cellar. It was not signed, no name. It said only one thing. In every generation, there will always be two. Not 2 siblings, not 2 twins, not even 2 people. 2 mirrors, 2 memories, 2 versions of the same pattern, repeating itself. Not because it is cursed, but because it is remembered. Do you believe a family secret can survive without a family? Can a pattern be alive and without ever being born? And then most importantly, what if you and someone you know are not related, but reflections of the same design? What state or country are you watching from? Tell me below. I read every comment.